All right, so today I am joined by Mark Carter. His achievements and experience is enormous. I've got to read out because he's done so much that I would miss one or two if I use my brain cells. So he's an international speaker, leadership and learning expert, and the author of Add Value, published by Willie. Mark's work is also featured in TED, the very famous speaking platform. With nearly 30 years of global experience, Mark has worked with leading brands and organizations worldwide, helping leaders and teams turn strategy into behavior and performance. An accredited behavioral analyst, sure, okay, and a regular contributor across TV, radio, print media. Mark blends cinematic storytelling, behavioral science, and practical frameworks to create experiences that are as memorable as they are actionable. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to join you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no, wonderful to have you. Today's topic is about AI, human behavior, and value. Right? There's so many podcasts out there which talks about tools, technology, platform, but we want to step away from it, and we want to make sure that how AI can be used to scale the human behavior, to use the human behavior without impacting the trust that human can create, but tools cannot. Right? So tell us a bit about that part, actually.
Yeah. I love that slant because intelligence has now become one of my top training keynotes. And when I reference AI, I deliberately talk about it in a duality of you've got AI being artificial intelligence, but it's also adaptive intelligence from a human behavior perspective. And I think that's the real question and the challenge of our time is how will AI add value to communities, businesses, and people? And so the blending of technology with people is really the slant I come from, and less so about the mechanics and the details of the AI tools, but more the reason why and the how to and the blending. So that's a great way to start because that's exactly the slant I come from. How does AI add value is the real question.
100%. Look, we caught up at a Christmas party of Franchise Council of Australia, and one thing led to other. We had a really interesting conversation, and you talked about 6 core values that any organization, whether it's a franchisor or franchise leader, needs to think about as well. So just walk us through briefly about that.
Yeah, so to me, it's the correlation with that question, and it's how does AI add value, is it layers with my value model, which is the book that's published by Wiley globally, and it expands on my TEDx talk that's featured on TED.com. So if I rewind, I'll take you back to the origin of that and then you understand it. I was coaching a bunch of sales leaders almost 20 years ago and trying to get them to get more out of the teams. I started asking the question, which is define value for me. And it was the answers that caught me off guard because some of them had never really thought about it. Some had gone, I've not really considered it. And it made me stop and think, because if you pause for a second, if we're not adding value in a business sense, we'll come to personal life in a moment, but in a business sense, if what you're doing is not adding value or delivering value, why is somebody going to deal with you?
100%.
Well, therefore, now you take that one step further. How can you expect to demonstrate or prove something you can't even define? Which set me down this rabbit hole of why is value so hard? And then the short version of that is value is a perception. It's linked to human behavior. We perceive value because of our own filters and lenses. That sent me down this kind of deep dive over many, many years, kind of put the ideas in the box and interviewing lots of people across different roles and businesses. And through that work, I identified what I talk about as the 5 value elements. And that's the 5 value elements I kind of layer to when I now pose this question of if you're going to integrate AI, technology, or tools of any kind, consider putting it through these 5 value elements. So they are, and we can start probably in a summary and then probably good we can drill in if you want to. Tangible value, which is the value language of business. Every business is built on a profit and loss sheet, spreadsheet, numbers, dollars, percentages, time. So measurable. That's tangible value, the value language of business. Emotional value, which is very different. I referenced that Kahneman won a Nobel Prize in the early 2000s for showing that even logical people make their decision making, even the most rational people, at a subconscious or emotional level. So emotional value we tap into through storytelling, innovation, personalization, and unique experiences, and our senses as well. Service value is what problem are you solving, what solution are you putting in place for the long term. And also service value is about quality of service and also considerations like environmental impact, sustainable impact, circular economy, and things like this. Fourth one is relationship value. The best, I don't know about your business, I'm sure you tell me, but for me, I would still say certainly over 90%, probably mid-90s in my business still comes from repetition or direct referral. And there's an increasing number in virality from people who see my cinematic keynotes. But so much of my business comes from relationships. Relationship value is the fourth one, is what are you doing to nurture and build strong relationships beyond transaction? And then the fifth value element is that personal value, because it's us being better people that brings the others to life. So that's the five values, if you like, that I talk about in the book, in the model. And that's the five value elements that I start layering. If we're going to consider how AI adds value, let's look at through those different lenses. Tangible value, emotional value, service value, relationship value, personal value.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, that's the foundation and core of any business to begin with. But the companies and especially the franchisors, wherever we go, they are chit-chatting about adding AI to their systems and technology, etc. But if we sit back and think about it, where do you start? Right, that's the most important question. You don't want to invest thousands of dollars in building these tools and platform, but you're not clear on your value proposition. The project might not come out as a success as you are hoping to, because the biggest challenge right now is basically the return on investment in AI project. People are not able to measure it. So let's keep that tangible thing aside if we can. Where do you start when we're talking about the value?
Yeah, so and that's why I come back to that. And you raise a great point, which is a lot of people may do with AI what we saw happen with tech. And people have got a lot of tech stacks now that is disconnected. So rather than rush into it, you've got to stop, pause, and think, well, what's our AI strategy and how do we even get AI ready? So my value model is one way. Stop and look, how is this going to add value measurably, emotionally, service-wise? We'll deal with relationship and personal separate, but those first three value elements. But then the second way you look is your strategy. There's two parent principles of AI to start, no matter the industry. And in franchising, as we know, franchising as a business model straddles many industries. But regardless the industry, your good starting point is also then looking at AI through how will it improve efficiency, but also how will it create greater intimacy and experience. It's not one or the other, it's both of those. So you've got a couple of lenses with which you can look through to start ironing out your strategy of AI implementation rather than just rush. First, how will it add value? Measurably, emotionally, service-wise. Second, are we considering both efficiency and experience and intimacy? And then within those two categories, there's a whole plethora of use cases that show up depending on your business, industry, and model. And by doing that, it forces you to slow down, because let's be real as well, and anybody that works with AI, even in the details of the tools, is the quality of your AI strategy success is going to be directly linked to the quality of the data of which it's based on. So if your data sets is not cleaned up, tidied up, strategically sorted out, connected position. If you don't do all that groundwork and foundational work, then your AI strategy is not necessarily going to be a success anyway. So these are the considerations. Think about how it's going to add value.
Yeah.
Think about efficiency and intimacy. Think about the data sets, and you've got to work with those as a foundational, brainstorm, blue sky, map it out, draw it out, before you even start then concerning yourself with which tools and how we roll them.
100%. So you're expert in human behavior as well. So how do you connect that in this value proposition, and when do you add that in your process of AI strategy?
Yeah. What I find, and the reason I started doing intelligence as a keynote is because typically you've got, I'm going to simplify it to two big audiences right now. And I don't think this has changed much even in the last few months. One part of an audience, super excited, racing into AI, can't wait, let's get it implemented. The other half, scared, in fear, hesitant. Yeah. What does this mean? Right. So as a behavioralist, human behavior side, you're dealing with, this is a significant, massive change for humanity, right? That you see spoken about. So for me, the starting point and the reason I started doing the keynote was to build a compelling narrative to help understand why AI, why now, to firstly help bridge the gap of those fears and hesitancies, but simultaneously to tether people back from the overexcitement and the overhype to come back to somewhat in the middle. So from a behavior perspective, I think that's what I saw, and that's what I see, and that's the slant I take with the keynote that lands really well, because we need to get some people up to speed to get comfortable. We need to tether a lot of people back. And we need to kind of get this middle ground of why now and have a strategic approach. And then if you've probably, well, I think you might have seen the keynote. I do these cinematic keynotes that are quite experiential, and the one on AI does this beautiful narrative journey of that through 10 lessons from 10 periods of human history. So I actually start my talk of AI in the Stone Age. So I'm kind of Stone Age, Iron Age, Classical period, Iron Age, Dark Ages, Age of Enlightenment, Imperialism, post-war boom, digital age, experience age, because there's a lesson from each of those that businesses and society still use. And so I kind of anchor the talk to these principles of behavior and community. And what you find is 8 of them are green lights as to why AI, why now. But the 2 biggest cautions, which is why people have fears, it goes back to our oldest hardwires ones of Stone Age, fight or flight, and ethics. True. And responsible use. Did you happen to see many of the keynotes at the NFC this year?
I saw quite a few of them, actually.
Yeah.
As well. I really enjoyed one of the sessions, which was like a roundtable session. And I forgot the name of the person, but the guy is coming from an AI compliance governing body or something.
Yeah.
And we had a really good chat along with your sort of keynote as well, which was really, really great. But one experience that I remember from that NFC was there's a franchisor, and we're sitting on a round table, and she goes, everyone is running after AI. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go human approach.
Yeah.
And I thought of myself, okay, so there is a readiness issue or a greediness issue. Greediness is basically somebody who really want to get on AI without having that thought process. Yeah. So it's either of those issues. So what you mentioned about is having the right balance in the middle.
Bring it back to
is key. And this franchisor goes and say, look, as everyone is running after AI tools, I'm going to make sure that my entire operation is based on human connection and etc. So getting her ready, because if she's not, the world will move so fast, and she or the franchisor might be left behind. We don't know, right? We don't know anything whether it's going to be successful or not. But what you mentioned, it resonates so well with me, is the values. Get your thoughts as clear as possible you can on all those 5 values. And that's your foundation. That's when you start building your layers after layers. Right?
Get your strategy right of how is it really going to add value holistically, people and productivity kind of considered. Get your data sets right, and then you can start, it's a change journey for people. I remember I was sitting at the back of NFC actually and had a chat with Jay. We watched a couple of those talks, Jay Westbury. And we came out and he actually asked, we were talking about, what do you think? And I made one comment, I remember. I said it to a couple of people. You would know franchising in Australia. It's the most regulated country in the world, as far as I understand, for franchising. So I said to Jay, I love, like, the AI talks are great, but what I also find is I anchor it in some level of reality. Because what I see at many events is people get excited because they go to these talks, they see what AI can now do. And it's like, wow. But then you ground that in reality. So think about it. Have you ever lived in an apartment building? Have you ever lived?
Yes.
The metaphor I use is try getting 40 owners or residents in an apartment building to put garbage down the chute the same way. Because that's challenging. When they've all got common purpose. Now, try and get businesses and governments around the world to agree to regulatory standards of AI. That is not happening anytime soon. And then you layer that with what is already a complex, regulated industry. So even if you get a lot of hype, I find as well, a lot of hype with the tools. We can have a separate conversation about that. I get it. Founders in those worlds, they're driving it. I get it. But sometimes it's hyperbolic and too much too soon. But even if the tech was there, what's the chance that the regulation will be agreed at a government level that allows you to do all these whiz-bang things? I remember at the franchise this year, there was examples like robots on planes or pushing people down the street. Even if the tech's there, do you see a government approving that in the next 6 months? Because I don't. Do you? I don't. So I think you've got to sometimes what you see the tools being able to do, and what you see in terms of, and when you think they're in grounded reality, what's regulation going to look like? It's going to catch up.
Yes.
And that's another key part of the talk. And the reason I do the keynote is it's business leaders that are going to be the ones that really need to take ownership of the ethics and regulatory standards, because it is moving fast. We need business leaders to really go on board with what is ethics and what is responsible use. And that's another consideration then for business owners, amongst how's it going to add value, how are we going to do it through people and productivity, through efficiency and intimacy, get our data right. But on top of that, I also then as a business owner need to have a charter for ethical, responsible use, because governments in a digital world are dealing with analog laws that move slowly. So I need to also consider that and have a charter for ethical standards as I roll out.
It's a really interesting point. Could you give us an example of what, in your lens, looks like an unethical use of AI?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll write about this a bit, so I'll just pull the one straight to mind straight away. We've already had it. I did a piece recently, where companies and digital companies farming data without permission to use that data to fuel AI. That's unethical use. X, I know, again, it's not a dig at the company, but I know they copped some fines for the way they were capturing data, and one use was being used elsewhere that was completely unethical. Government departments have had this. They've been slapped with fines because, civilians' private data was leaked because it had been used in ChatGPT and government. So there's so many examples of just even the way data is farmed and used as a simple level right now. Another one would be, this brings to mind, and we're seeing this play out now with the recent, I did a radio interview on Saturday actually about the social media ban or delay, depending which way you want to talk about it. Because in that world, I think the most obvious regulatory standard right now would be transparency, that I'm dealing with AI. Like, if I'm dealing with a company and you think you're having a conversation with a real person, it's fair that I know that. Now, if I wish to deal with an AI machine, that's cool. But if I don't know, that's unethical. These are obvious ones to me, I think. So the fact that it's moving quickly, but transparency, some level of transparency around how it's being used.
Which beckons the question, how are you going to be able to trust business leaders who are focused on tangible results, like you said earlier. How are you going to trust them to be ethical when they're focused on profit?
Now, this is a great question. A good question. No, not at all. I think this is beautiful, and this is why, it's a slightly different subject, but it also comes to mind with the interview on Saturday. I mean, this social media ban that's come out, overwhelmingly in Australia, I know it's over 70% of people kind of agree with it. Some don't. But here's the thing, when you've got a business model where the commercial reality is at odds with the ethics, not to say it always wins, but we know it sometimes it's sacrificed, right? So this is where we as well, the power though, I think it's not the regulation of AI. It's going to take, as I see it from a behavior perspective, governments longer to catch up with that. And the power, as I see it from a behavior perspective, is really back in the hands of us as individuals and consumers to do a better job of diligence, of checking out who we're working with, who am I supporting, who am I buying from, and going deeper into that. And that I think is the challenge. I think that's on to me then to do my homework and ethics. And in a world where we're all time poor, we got to slow down. That's the lesson for us as consumers as well, because sometimes the businesses you think you can trust, you might still get caught. But it's that diligence at an individual level, I think. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. It was a great question.
Well, the thing is that, like you said, I don't think we have enough time to, how many people like Zuckerberg? Probably not many, but everyone still uses Facebook, right? That's kind of the truth. Just to use Facebook as an example, they've been brought up many times, 7 inquiries and all that. But it doesn't harm their numbers, right?
But it's starting to though. I'm not on the only socials I use are very LinkedIn. I actually came off those platforms. I personally don't like them. They've got value, but for me, I just look at them very differently. And I've sat in closed room sessions where I see data about this stuff that puts me off more and more. But I have noticed as well, there's a trend that, you read plenty of articles like this now, have those platforms past their peak because daily usage time is now dropping. And users are coming off those platforms now. And even simple facts like when the way they're packaged is you're going to connect with your friends, but the reality, I think, sort of a reference point for the weekend, something like 7% of the content you see is actually your friends. Everyone else has suggested, pushed onto you. So I think people are disengaging because it's not really what you thought it would be. So I think that'll change. But it's a great question, but it is, how do you choose? Well, you've got to do your homework. More of your homework.
And who's qualified to make the rules? Like, who is it a philosopher? Is it someone about it?
Does not know anything about the tech.
This is hence it's complex. It's not an easy fix. You've got to have those discussions, and to get people even agreeing on a context for AI and a context for what this is, it takes time. So again, why I come back, while that's all playing out, which is not swift, the technology is moving rapidly, far more rapid than that. It's incumbent for me. I go, okay, I'll do my diligence and check for myself. And I think that's the best we can do to figure out who can I trust, what do I use? Do I think they've got a good purpose? Is this a company that has a good track record? Are they doing good things beyond profit, beyond profitability?
Fantastic. So getting back to your value proposition, because that's the starting point. So once you've got your value proposition sorted, what's the next step? And I'm thinking from, of course, the franchise system perspective, because as you know, that is the most scalable business model in the world is a franchise system. And if a business, whether it's small, medium, large, they want to start, embedding AI into their process, and most of the franchises are already doing it, right? Marketing, training, operations, they started doing it. But then what is your perspective is the really good way to start for a solid, or probably I would say rather strong sort of growth as well.
So yeah, and I love how you said their value proposition. So I want to start with that because the value model I taught, and those 5 values I referenced, they absolutely are relevant to a value proposition, but I also can hone in and start with a very laser-focused definition for value proposition as well. The market, your value proposition in market would be what is unique about you and what you do that is simultaneously valuable to the end user. And that definition comes from solution selling methodology. It's one I've really always enjoyed. I like. And then you can talk about value in the context of value proposition is what pain does it resolve or what desire does it create. So if you understand what's unique and problem solving or desire creating about your product, there's your starting point for value proposition. Now you can go deeper and look at the value elements within that. Okay, how will this add tangible value? How does this appeal to emotional value? How does this address service value? And the reason I want to call those 3 out is because what I've also noticed is that businesses that articulate, I call it now that tri-value, tangible, emotional, service. Businesses that people really get and support typically often have those 3 value elements clearly articulated in their value proposition, in their vision statements, in their mission statements. It's not 1 or 2 of them. It's all 3 of them. You know, examples that spring to mind again. I love talking about the who gives a crap. Do you know the toilet paper like Simon is awesome, great business model. And when that business was first created, like we're going to give half our profits to charity. Investors don't. You know, now they do. Now that business model is kind of sought after because it's making a difference in the world. But you know, they're clear. We give 50% of our profits as the tangible. Our products are feel good. There's the emotional. We believe everybody's got a right to clean water. There's a service value. I could keep going. You could tear apart these value propositions, vision statements, mission statements. Those 3 values: tangible, emotional, service, clearly articulated.
Yeah.
Because think about it as well from a customer perspective. When you're landing a new customer, you don't have a relationship with them.
Yeah.
You build that continually over time, and therefore it's harder to add personal value to if you don't really know that person. So the last 2, relationship value, personal value, you get more refined and better at over time. The tangible, emotional, service, you can communicate and deliver on that from the get-go. So that's I know it's a longer way of answering your question, but value proposition, what's unique and valuable about what you do? Does you solve a problem, create a desire?
Yeah.
Now within that, you can start looking at those value elements and identify the measurable, the emotional, and the service side of it. Communicate that.
Yeah.
That's a good start point to go. And then, you know, where do you start then? I come back to those 2 parent examples of AI.
Yeah.
Where can we look to be more efficient, greater efficiency? Where can we look to create better experience or intimacy?
Yeah.
And you'll start within your business seeing opportunities there. Where's the roadblocks? Where's the frustrations?
Yeah.
Where's your blind spots? Because that starts to inform you of opportunities potentially where AI and machine learning tools can help.
Yes.
So that's the kind of structure I go to. And then because the specific use cases then is going to vary business to business.
True.
Based on that level of
100%
of looking.
100%. Based on this, do you, because you work across franchise industry a lot, any brand resonated very well with you when you can say, okay, these guys, you know, from that 3, you know, your value proposition standpoint, they sort of hit the nail on the head. Sorry, I'm putting you in the spot.
No, yeah, you are. You know, rather than go down, I will say, because I remember when I did the intelligence keynote, I think I might have said to you, I did that with NFC at Cairns, actually, as the opening keynote for Cairns. I was joking, I said to Jay recently, actually, I spent about 30 to 40 hours editing 6 minutes of that keynote. Because I kept changing it because it was planned months ahead, and then I wanted to really make it bespoke. And the 6.5 minute segment I was really working on hard was what's use cases right now for AI, because it was so fast moving.
Yeah.
And I kept finding different examples. So rather than go, hey, this one brand, because I think if you have a look, there's many different brands for different reasons. What I will say is FMCG and that kind of restaurant and food-based ones, they were starting to play with AI quite significantly on things like supplies, logistics and supplies and reordering and stocks. Broader across franchising, some of them were really starting to get hands-on with being able to use AI to identify opportunity areas based on same data of where's going to be a good area. And also, even as part of the interviewing process for franchisees, actually being able to build informed AI data into part of that decision-making well. And I'm really conscious of saying a part of that decision-making, because you don't just outsource it and then rely on it, right?
Sure.
So there's different use cases. Again, in retail side, if you've got franchises that are on that kind of retail and client-facing, there's many examples where they've started to use AI for things like loyalty programs and personalization. Personalization in products and experience. So with that going on one brand, I'm kind of giving you categories to make it more usable for the audience here. You know, you can see already, and that appeals to both those parent levels I spoke to, like inventory, supply, stocks, that's that efficiency. Personalization, loyalty, that's that intimacy and customer experience. So you can see, depending where you sit, there's some brands already playing quite powerfully across all of those. So there isn't one, you know, I love how you put me on the spot, I don't mind that at all, but there isn't, I can't say there's one franchise right now that springs to mind for me that's just kind of bang across the board across all of those. I think there's different ones for different reasons doing great things, and that gives you some examples.
100%. So when we talk about all this stuff, I think what you're looking at is an AI in the area or department where there is a lot of repetitive work. But can you really exclude a human touch out of it, or you would still actually get involved to some certain extent? Have you reached that stage where you don't need to get human involved at all?
Yeah, great. I'll start here. So I've actually been doing I've hosted some closed room dinners with C-suite leaders of big Australian companies on this conversation, intimate dinners discussing AI. And what springs to mind is the answer to this is because without doubt, across the board, all of them were pretty much in unison of they see in their deployment of AI is human supported by AI and not AI unleashed. Like, so to your point, it's not taking the human out of the equation. It's human supported by, and that human oversight. So that I mentioned earlier about having your own charter for ethical use. I come around with that in conversation. I've got some really cool connections. Unfortunately, I have some cool connections in my circle in the AI space. Josh, who's with Codis, I remember talking to him, and he walked through this kind of 8 principles for a sound charter, which I really buy into. And one of those principles is human oversight, not just AI unleashed. So I personally still think that human level capacity of oversight. Now, I'm sure that for you on here in this franchises, there's going to be parts or areas of their business that they've already done enough testing uniform where that oversight has possibly come lower or less, that it's safer because the accuracy is like really good now. But as a general principle, human oversight still is the way to go. And for me, because you also asked someone, for me, like, were you asking that as well as for me how I am? Yeah, I'm more on the cautious side, and I'm using AI in a very strategic way, and certainly not the way people would think. So, for example, you see my keynotes, the cinematic style keynotes. I think a lot of people think I must be doing a lot of that work with video on there, and I'm not. In fact, all the productions to date have had 0 footage from AI. The one I'm currently building now, I think I'm doing that end to end myself. I've started playing with little bits of it, and so far I can see about 12 seconds of AI footage in a 1 hour keynote. So now that may increase like that, gives you some idea.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is my field as a trainer. So in my field of business, you chunk it up. As a speaker, that's me and my brand. As a trainer, that's the content. That's scalable with other people that can deliver and facilitate my content. But here's the thing. I see tools coming out for AI that people rave about, going, "Now, why AI can build this presentation for you, AI can do this deck, it can do this learning." Great. But the challenge with that is if you just put it in and let it do it, you lose the power of communicating that when you go to facilitate that message.
Yeah.
If you've got no connectivity with the content, how do you facilitate that?
Sure.
The reason I can do my cinematic keynotes is I don't need the content.
Yeah.
That's a prop.
Yeah.
I know where I'm up to without looking. And it's not even scripted. I can play with the content and go and dabble with it. So to me, that's why I say I'm using it sparingly, because for my field of business, even with IP, I'm the presentation, I'm the facilitator, I'm the deliverer. Everything else is a prop. So AI creating content is not something I'm leaning heavily into. I am using it for getting, I write for media a lot, as you mentioned earlier. I don't use AI to create content. I might write the piece 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and I might put sections in, and at the end, depending on the piece, say, okay, look at this through a lens and give me, are there biases, are there blind spots? Is there something different? So I might use it to get some additional insight, but I don't just take that content
directly.
No. So I'm using it to answer your point, like human oversight.
Yeah.
AI is a tool within that, and I would say right now I'm using it fairly sparingly because I've been edging, I'm in kind of that cautious side of using it fairly sparingly.
Yeah, just having a chat with someone, there's a really nice thing. AI is your intern. So just think about it. If you have an AI or if you have an intern person, you would train them, right? You would get them right. You would just always be on it to make sure that they understand the objective of that role. They have the set KPIs, and then you're consistently sort of working with them to get better in their job, right? So is that the best way to put it in terms of the AI tool? Yeah,
like see it as an intern. You definitely educate it. Even when you build your own, you're educating it and it's growing and learning, but you're putting in those inputs and educating it. Education, separate from franchise, but EdChat in South Australia is a case study when I've done education work. Like they put guardrails around it. It's a closed system. It learns. They're using it really powerfully for teachers and students. It's a guardrail. It's not just this open thing. And even, news, the AI tools are getting caught for fiction and ghost information that's not real. So yes, I like your description there.
Yeah.
Where did you hear that one? Who intern?
So
AI as an intern.
We did a speech at the FCA, like in the lunch and learn, and in that one question came up, and it just came out. So my answer to that question was somebody was saying how far you trained that and etc. And just straight up sort of came out as like treat it as an employee. It is your employee at the end of the day, right? They're calling it an agent, AI agent, in varying capacity, marketing, sales, operation, training, etc. At the end of the day, it's as they say, garbage in, garbage out, right? So you got to train them so much. And we're building, one tool, which is a proprietary AI tool as well. And we've sort of reached 80% there, but there are minor things that keep breaking. So we think, okay, the AI, we got the right sort of process behind, we got the right sort of objective of the tool. We got everything sort of discussed, brainstormed, reiterated probably 10 million times. But it's just a minor thing that keeps sort of having an error. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
This is an automated SMS tool, right, which actually talks with the prospects who wants to buy a franchise in a very organic manner, right? It's not like, okay, when are you available? This is the appointment, blah, blah, blah. It's not like that. It's basically like a kind of Expedia in terms of that particular franchise model. So if the prospect asks the question, okay, how does your model work, etc., this tool explains this is how it works, right? And then when it comes to sort of prospect asking, okay, can you sort of come back to me in 15 minutes, I'm in a meeting, this tool always goes back and say, okay, can I call you back in today or tomorrow? No, the prospect said 15 minutes, right? Just get in touch. It's a minor thing, right, that the AI doesn't understand. Sometimes AI doesn't understand between franchise fee and royalty fees. I think it's the same, right?
Yeah.
So how do you educate them? Because you got to treat this as a person who has not worked in a franchise industry at all. So how do you feed that information to make sure that it's giving answers that you want?
Yeah, and that's the nuance you're describing. Well, like those prompts. I mean, they're coming up with whole new job titles now, right? Prompt titles for AI engineers. I've found the same. Like when I have used AI in certain capacities, you put it in, it's obvious, and yet it keeps spitting out what you go, no, I mean this. You change your prompt, it still doesn't pick up on it. So that's where you get into the technicalities of the tools themselves and learning. I don't have an answer for you as to why it will or won't. That's where you ask an AI expert what from a behavior perspective. Yeah, that's why you keep an oversight.
Absolutely.
That's why you have that human supported by, not unleashed.
But coming back to your values, one of the values you mentioned was culture, right? And I'm just going back to the franchise system. So the two culture. Yeah, that's one of the things as well, right? So two franchise systems, same industry, same model, same pricing, same processes, but they perform differently, right? And my guess on that is basically it's about the cultural difference that makes a difference in terms of whether one is going to be successful, other one is not. Now, when I talk about culture, it's about the leadership as well. So what sort of culture they drive, because it's part of your value ecosystem as well, right? So how do you see that, and how do you identify, okay, there's a cultural issue here in this franchise model or any business model, but this one, it ticks boxes?
I love that. And it's a media conversation. There's a correlation between values, culture, and leadership. But to me, I've actually got the separate keynotes and separate programs. What I was going to say is now, when you're describing those two franchises, are you talking the performance? They perform very differently. Are we talking here they're within the same franchise, they're in different locations, so it's the same, or it's different franchise
businesses altogether? It's a different brands.
Yeah. That's one. Okay, so yeah, great point, and that opens up whole other levels of which culture's one, brand perception and market by one, but culture could be a great one for that as well. Like, yes, absolutely, your culture is going to make an impact. Leadership has a direct impact on that culture being rolled out. So, this is why, without getting into, I think that's a separate podcast, which I'm happy to do in the new year on culture, if you like, but that's where, to me, you go, okay, is when you position your business and get people in, are they clear with your vision, mission, values? Do you drive those values and the behavior of interactions of your franchises with consistency? And then you can get into, there's lessons we can learn from an ethnological sense in culture. Like, the word culture doesn't come from business in the first place, it comes from tribes. But there's lessons we can learn from a tribal sense of culture, like what traditions do you have? What values do you have that people buy into? What are our strengths? How do we communicate with each other? And then you can start learning that with organizational culture, 4 pillars. Do we have our compliance and administration sorted? Let's face it, franchises, the whole model is based on the system. Scalable way. So have we got our compliance and admin and system sorted, but have we got performance culture sorted? Yeah. And in balance, meaning we keep it in check. Performance for the sake of results is where you can get toxic behaviors. An example that springs to mind is the commission they had when the cricketers got caught cheating. It's just that they found the pressure to win was greater than valuing the rules. Sure. That's performance culture out of whack. Yes, we want to get results, but not at the expense of our values or whole thing. Learning culture, do we keep evolving and learning? Unique culture, do we keep innovating? So that's some cultural pillars. Again, I've just published a couple of pieces in media on this stuff recently as well. So I'm giving you a short answer to a much broader conversation on culture, because the short answer I would say is absolutely the culture has an impact on the performance.
100%. Franchise as a system, it is so important because a lot of press is out there talking about franchising, probably not in a positive manner because of one or two sort of incidents, but overall, the franchise is an ecosystem. It's doing really well. It's thriving. It's one of the most important part in the Australian community and GDP growth as well. So having that right culture in place is so paramount. And what I was trying to allude with this question is having AI or leaders rushing to get AI in place, would that have an impact in terms of culture that they need to drive, right? Because as a franchise leader, there needs to be involved in the business. There needs to be working with the franchisees on a day in, day out basis or as frequently as possible because that's how you build culture. But having AI, is that gonna, is just gonna make the leaders to sort of go in a back seat and just let the AI do everything as well? Because having your training, when you have a one-on-one training, then that's just a human interaction. That's you building culture. But if you build the AI system for training as well, that means you have sort of kind of one less touch point, right? So I'm asking a pretty long, complex question, but it alludes to AI, culture, and how you can actually make the franchise system future-proof in as well.
Yeah, I love it. And it's a great, I get the context of the AI linked to culture. Absolutely. And in fact, I've got a couple of features coming out in franchise edition magazines in the new year. I've written, they've got published. One's on AI and one's on leadership. So they fuse together. This, right now, what I see, even with organizations I'm working with, is the AI piece, it's a change piece. The cultural impact is you're going to have people either looking to come into your franchise or already in your franchise that are like the audience I say are typical. Some of them are in abject fear or got concerns. Well, what does this really mean? What's it look like? Others may be super excited. So from a leadership level, this is a change piece and a communication piece of taking them on that journey and having them involved in that journey of, well, how should we as a business use it? This is how we're going to use it, communicating it and rolling that out in a way that doesn't negatively impact any existing cultural nuances are there. So yeah, it's a change piece, and leadership has absolutely got a significant hand in how the perception of any AI strategy the franchise has is going to be interpreted and adopted and used and leveraged and bought into by the franchises, for sure.
Fantastic. I think I've covered most of the questions. Do you want to add anything which you want me to ask you that question as well?
Yeah, no, I'm a guest in your house, my friend.
I was wondering if you were talking, for example, your cinematics, would you want to ask that question as well? That just give you,
in terms of
cinematic, your experience you're talking about. Do you want to ask a question about that?
Oh no,
so
not necessarily. I think I know when we had the discussion, we were talking. You said, AI is a big topic. We got talking. I think it is, and I think this is great. I'm sure there's other avenues we can drill into it, but if I simplify and come back, to where we started, it is a big conversation. People are rushing in. I would encourage you slow down and think about it more broadly, not just rushing because other people are. Get on the journey, certainly. Get those foundational principles right. You got to think more strategically of before you implement. Right? Have you got the data sets even right?
Yeah.
Asking how will or can AI or any change or tech tool add value to either our franchisees or our customers.
Yeah.
And then putting that through those, not just results, not just measurability, which is often the rushing, measurable value, emotional value, service value, relationship value, personal value. But those first three, measurable, emotional, service value, brainstorm that out and start thinking more holistically then of going, okay, this is potentially how we can use it. And then efficiency, intimacy, and work through a strategy that's of real value and not just rushing to put it in place. And again, I would implore it's incumbent on leaders in industries, and I would really want to stress that I believe in it. strongly is that it's leaders in industries that are going to be the ones leading the charge on ethical and responsible use of these tools. Because I don't see governments catching up anytime soon to the way that businesses are using it.
Yeah, what you just said is I just thought about this actually. The leaders of franchisors are looking to embed any of the AI systems in their AI technology in their system. How critical it is to involve your franchisees as a part of the process as well, because they are facing consumers, right? Whatever you're doing in your business, it's all about consumers, right? Like you gotta please them in one way or another way as well. Whether it's a value, it's a cost, it's a convenience, whatever it is. But it's how getting your franchisees involved in that brainstorming conversation initially is so paramount. And most of the franchisors, once they sell, sometimes they just sort of leave them alone, right? So having that regular check-ins are so critical, isn't it?
I love that point. So there's a handful of bodies of work that are pretty common for me to work in businesses and franchise businesses with that. Leadership, culture, sales. Now, what you've described, when I go and do bespoke, and I've done a few of them, bespoke sales methodologies, sales capabilities and upskilling that, where we do consider the tech they're using. But when we do a bespoke method, I always recommend and say to the business, we're going to do analysis and we're going to have your franchisees involved in that. We're going to have people on the front line involved in that. And here's why, because if you're capturing their insights and inputs, so they're part of the process. Now in sales, often it does highlight things they need to hear, but it's rare that there's anything really groundbreaking that you wouldn't have expected to come in that feedback from them. It's more that they're on the journey and now you've got it in their language, in their real world experience, in their lived experience, and now you can build whatever it is you're going to build, and when you deploy it, it is now relatable.
Yes.
It is theirs, and it's built, often the line would say it's built with them, by them,
cultural,
for them. They're involved, and now you've got a much greater chance of adoption. So I think the point you say there, absolutely, it's no different than when we do deeper levels of work, whether it's sales capabilities, even leadership programs, depending on what that is, but absolutely having your frontline involved in that blue sky thinking, in that input, in that analysis, because even if it doesn't turn up things that you weren't aware of, typically it's not going to uncover things you hadn't thought of, but it will give you a language and real world examples, and maybe some areas that you didn't think were as important. It might highlight the importance of them more than you maybe thought. So 100%, I would say, I think having them involved in that analysis and discovery is a powerful thing to do as well. Yeah.
Well, last question. If you have to give one piece of advice to franchise leaders who want to future-proof their network, what behavior should they focus on?
It's funny, I got asked this recently, and so maybe it's because it's fresh in my mind. I'm going to go counterintuitive, it's maybe not what you think. I would say slow down. Like in a digital age where speed is everything, I'd say kind of be a maverick. To be a maverick in the digital age, like Top Gun and stuff. If you feel the need for speed, feel the need for less speed. Take your time and do it properly. Don't just rush it.
Yeah.
Slow down.
Fair enough.
A bit.
Good advice.
Because,
be swift, not fast. There's a difference.
100%. Very good, very good. Because everyone is talking about speed, right? And you're going under the run. Just slow down. Yeah.
Just a touch. Take like that level of go a bit deeper. Why are we actually? What's our strategy? If we're rushing in with that, it's not going to end well anyway. So if you feel the need for a little less speed, do a bit more deeper.
That's true. Fantastic, Mark. Thank you so much. It's been very informative. It's a conversational, and I'm sure it's going to add a lot of value to your audiences, both yours and ours as well. Have a safe flight.
I really appreciate it. I'm sure there's other, like I say, I love that we tapped into the culture as well. I've got like a variety of those keynotes, as you mentioned. I think we could have some other meatier conversations around those exact topics too. Maybe we'll do that.
I'd love to have things about the culture.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like in a franchise, it's a family, it's a culture. It is exactly what it is, and family doesn't work without having a proper culture in it, right? So whether you consider business family or your personal family, it's basically your discipline, your culture, your communication. That's what drives it. That's what makes it successful, right? So
I said actually at the Christmas function, I made that comment. Like I've collaborated quite a lot now with the Franchise Council of Australia. I think like 4 keynotes in 4 years at 4 conferences and then multiple states. And I've said over that time, I already had connections in franchise, which is what opened the door in the first place. Quite frankly, clients I work with that said, get Mark in, but it really is a great vibe that's built on trust and consistency. When you consistently show up and you be part of that sector and you support and nurture the sector, I think I feel very fortunate to have some great connections in franchise to help support what's an amazing industry, big industry too here. So yeah, it's cool.
it is. Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate your time. It's always wonderful to catch up with you.
Chat soon.
That's it.